Many preppers don't know at what times they should be choosing a rifle over a handgun, or the fact that they even need a fighting rifle instead of just a handgun. And today's video is going to answer those questions so we're just better prepared for SHTF, right after the channel intro.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired! Ambulance en route.
Welcome to this channel. This channel is all about learning how to prepare for when the dark times come and the grocery stores are stripped bare. And this channel is also about prepping for those dark days while still retaining our integrity and our honor. So I want you to imagine something. Imagine that some kind of an event has happened that has caused our economy to collapse. People are without jobs, food is scarce, people are starving. And without taxes being paid, pretty much all of the police and firefighters and medics and everybody has been laid off. And with all of this, your area and the rest of the US has plunged and is now like living in one of the worst third world countries. Now during the daytime, many people are out and trying to do stuff to survive. They're trying to produce food and do whatever else. But when night falls, especially when there's no electricity to light anything, not even the inside of one's home, everybody goes inside and locks everything up and stays hidden until the morning comes. Because it's at night when the criminals really come out thicker than during the daylight. And then one night, in the middle of the night, you hear your back door being busted open. You slide out of your bed and you grab your firearm. You peek out of your bedroom door, and in the darkness, and with the moonlight shining through a window, you see three men that are armed with handguns that are starting to make their way into your house. So what I want you to answer to yourself, that the weapon that you have in your hand in this scenario will be the same weapon or weapons that you currently own now and would have with you after SHTF happens. So what I want you to answer to yourself is your weapon that you're holding in the scenario, is it a handgun? Or is it a rifle, or at least some other kind of a long gun? Now you can answer below if you want, or don't answer if you're not comfortable putting into a public comment of what kind of weapons that you have. But I want you to definitely answer that question, at least for yourself. And what I'm hoping for is that you are at least able to say that you'd have a rifle or at least some kind of other long gun. So today's video may be very basic to some long-term firearm enthusiasts, but we have to remember there are a lot of newer preppers, and there's also a lot of other people out there who have just not had the opportunity to be exposed yet to all of the knowledge that you have gained over the years. So if you have chosen to have only a handgun as a weapon for self-protection for your house during regular times, or for protection for after SHTF, then, barring any mitigating circumstances, you have made a very bad choice. And let me explain. First, if I'm going to be forced to shoot an armed bad guy in order to save my life, I want a fighting rifle to be my primary weapon if possible. And when I say fighting rifle, I'm talking about a dependable AR-15 or an AK-47 or something similar that are semi-automatic and have a decent capacity of rounds. In the scenario that I described above, a fighting rifle is going to be superior to the handgun. Your battle rifle will usually have more rounds, have more accuracy, and have more stopping power than a bad guy's handgun, especially when you're facing multiple opponents. Simply put, you're more likely to incapacitate your deadly threats much quicker with a rifle than a handgun. Now, one thing that I want everybody to remember is that in the scenario that I listed above, which took place in the dark and with multiple opponents, as soon as that first shot goes off, whether it's your shot or a bad guy shot, but as soon as that first shot happens, it's going to turn into instant chaos. You may develop auditory exclusion. Dust is probably going to be flying everywhere. The flashes from the gunfire in the dark may make it difficult to see. And you're also probably going to have a hard time tracking the movements of all of the bad guys all at once. And things will begin happening so fast that you'll have a hard time completing a full OODA loop, because you'll have to start reacting to a new micro situation within that same situation before you would be able to get the old micro situation taken care of. Basically, how a fighting rifle is going to be superior to a handgun in a situation like this is that you will have a better chance of getting more rounds downrange towards your bad guys, and your rounds will be more devastating to them. You'll have superior firepower over them, and either get them eliminated quicker, or at very least gets whoever survives your barrage of firepower to retreat faster. Now, some of you will say that your pump shotgun will be plenty enough to take care of them in that scenario. And you're right, but mainly only if you get the drop on them. If your floor creaks when you walk. Or if they just happen to notice you right before you fire and they fire that first round, your pump shotgun may not automatically hit your bad guys like you may think. First, shotguns don't spread as far as many people think. Usually double-aught buckshot spreads about 1 inch for every yard that they travel. So for the distances of firing from one room into another room, that's not going to be a very wide spread. And then, that is precious split seconds that you're wasting when you're having to pump that next shell into your shotgun to continue firing, since you have 3 opponents in that scenario. Whereas a good semi-automatic fighting rifle will be putting more lead towards your opponents. And we also have to remember that the human body can many times take an enormous amount of damage before it finally goes down and is no longer a deadly threat anymore. And for those spots on the human body that if you hit it, that it causes your opponent to immediately drop and be out of the fight, they are surprisingly hard to hit when that target is moving, and even more difficult to hit when that target is a deadly threat to you during the chaos of a shooting. So for me, while I don't live and breathe firearms, but have decent experience with them, for me, for self-defense, when possible, I would rather bring a rifle to a gunfight over a handgun. Now, I understand that some of you can't afford to jump up and run down to your local gun store and buy a rifle. And I also understand that some of you live in areas where fighting rifles are not allowed due to local laws. But what I am saying is that if you can afford it, and if you live in an area where you can have one of these fighting rifles, and you've also built up some of your other preps such as food and water, then you need a fighting rifle and ammo for it for self-defense against deadly threats, especially in your home and on your property. Now, don't get me wrong, I am definitely not saying to throw away your handgun or your shotgun. While fighting rifles may have more range and will many times hold more rounds than a handgun, handguns still have their advantages because they are much more concealable, allowing you to take them into places where you don't want people to know that you're armed. And also, having a rifle slung on you all day long can get tiring, whereas you can throw a pistol on your hip and forget about it. And then even if a slung rifle on your body doesn't tire you out, they can still get in the way when you're trying to work on things. But just like I said earlier, you can slap your handgun on your hip and not have it getting in the way while you're trying to work. And lastly, a handgun is a great backup weapon in case your fighting rifle has a malfunction or something like that. And for shotguns, you definitely want one because they will do devastating damage to the criminal who is posing a deadly threat to you. And my personal belief is, a shotgun may be even better than the fighting rifle if you are only taking on one armed opponent in a close range setting, like inside of your house in the scenario that I gave at the beginning of this video. But the limits of the shotgun are that they are made for shorter range and they typically don't carry as many shells as a good fighting rifle will. So if SHTF has happened and it's gotten dangerous enough that you have to do or take part of patrols to keep away armed bad guys, then you want to be armed with a fighting rifle and also with a handgun as backup instead of just being armed with a handgun. I kind of like these popular rules when it comes time for fighting rifles. The first one being that you never want to intentionally bring only a handgun to any kind of a gunfight. And the second one is that your handgun is to fight your way back to your rifle if you weren't able to have your rifle on you at that moment in time. Let's just use this as an example. It's after SHTF and you're at your home and you're doing chores inside of your home. So because you're doing chores, you have your rifle propped up on a nearby wall. In this situation, you would want to have your pistol on your hip in case an armed person suddenly breaks in your door. Because then you would have your pistol to throw lead towards the armed bad guy as you go for your rifle. Basically, if you're throwing lead at the bad guy, it helps to keep him from getting clear shots at you as you go for your rifle. But if for some reason, after SHTF, and you cannot let it be seen that you're armed, then that's when a handgun would be preferred. Because you can hide a handgun much more easily on your body than you can a rifle. And let me reword that in another way. The only reason, after SHTF, the only reason that I would rely on a handgun as being my primary defense weapon would only be if I could not have a battle rifle on me. Now folks, just please remember that the scenarios that I'm giving in this video are for after SHTF, after the rule of law has broken down. Please don't think that I'm suggesting that you sling your rifle over your shoulder and go out in public to run errands during regular times. In some states that may be illegal, and it's also pretty much a surefire way to get yourself asked to leave by management into every store or bank that you walk into. But I like to think of firearms like tools. There's many different tools out there, and every tool has its time and place when that tool works the best. And firearms are the same way. Each type of firearm, and I'm talking groups like handguns and battle rifles and shotguns, 22s and long distance rifles. But each type of firearm has its time and place, just like a regular tool. And ideally, for SHTF, you want to have several different firearms for different situations. If you can't afford it, and you've also got other important preps also taken care of. Ideally, unless you're having to bug out on foot, it's nice to have a solid handgun, plus a 22 caliber rifle, plus a shotgun with the different types of shells, plus a good battle rifle, plus a good scoped long distance rifle, and heck, even a high powered air rifle. And then with all of that comes the training and the spare parts and the gun cleaning materials and the ammunition. And we won't keep going on about that stuff because it will change this short video into a much longer one. But if it's after SHTF and after a breakdown of the rule of law, you want to have a good battle rifle as your primary defense. And then have your handgun as your backup weapon. You just don't want to be outgunned by the bad guy. And in fact, you don't even want to be on a level playing field as the bad guy. If he's armed with a handgun, then you want to outgun him and be armed with a good semi-automatic rifle so that you have superior firepower over him. So let's hear from the community. What other reasons can you think of that a battle rifle would be preferred over a handgun? And what reasons can you think of that a handgun would be preferred over a rifle? And after SHTF, when the grid goes down, burnable wood may be stripped clean by others trying to keep warm, especially if your area has an oncoming cold winter. So being able to cook without a fire and without a liquid fuel is an absolute must for a prepper. And to see a video on just how useful a sun oven is for a serious prepper, then click on the video link that should be appearing on the top of the screen just about now to learn more about that. And if you've ever wanted to join a prepper group so that you up your odds of survival after SHTF, but you don't know how to find or join one, then click on the video that should be appearing on the right side of the screen just about now to learn how you can find a group and get invited to join it. Anyways folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.